Good morning, everybody. Happy Hump Day to you on this June 18th, 2025. I have all of your stories for your rush hour ride to work. And today we've got what we like to call a cornucopia of content. We really have it all. We'll be discussing the Karen Read trial as the jury may be coming to a decision today. It could be a big one, finding out if they have an answer. We'll get into that. And then Justin Baldoni also in the news as his law firm responds to Blake Lively's attempt to get a protective order to make sure that any text messages with regard to Taylor Swift don't get leaked. So we'll have that very interesting response by them. And then New York City Comptroller Brad Lander, he's running in the Democratic primary for mayor, was arrested by ICE officials. Unbelievable stuff. I've got that video. I'll share what he said. And then more on this war breaking out between Iran and Israel, what Ted Cruz and other warmongers have to say, and what the heck we can do to make sure our country doesn't get sucked into it. And then also more on Elon Musk and his negative drug test that he took. Turns out he might have been fibbing a little bit. So we'll get into all these stories and more. It starts right now on The Rush. Well, it could be a big day for those that are covering the Karen Read trial. Have you been following along? The jury questions suggest same legal dilemma as last year's mistrial. So again, the state of Massachusetts has spent millions upon millions of dollars in trying her for murder. The last trial, they acquitted her on some charges and had a hung jury on others, and did a full mistrial, even though a jury of her peers, basically said she wasn't guilty. So will she get a worse fate this time? Here's what the news has to say.
A mood shift as the jury in Karen Read's retrial suggests in an afternoon note to the judge that a verdict might be hard to come by.
If we find not guilty on 2 charges but can't agree on 1 charge, is it a hung jury on all 3 charges or just 1 charge?
You heard that right, an indication that jurors might be deadlocked on 1 charge.
And again, anyone who's following this, we've been talking to our friend Rachel Juarez, who's a judge on a hot bench, but anyone who's been following this will be looking into clues like, did the jury dress up today? Is that an indication that they're going to expect to have a final decision? But after talking to my friend Rachel Juarez, she said that this could mean that they've pretty much decided to acquit her on the murder charge. Again, just speculation right now. We'll have to see. And that maybe they are looking at lesser charges. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. Make sure to subscribe for all updates as we will be covering the sort of response as it comes in. Well, Tyler Perry has been sued for assault. Wild stuff. Oval actor claims years of harassment and more. He actually drops the text messages. Pretty crazy. The very flirty and aggressive text messages from Tyler Perry, essentially accused of being at the very least a creep, as the guy who's suing him for a lot of money here, Derek Dixon, he filed this lawsuit and claims he and the director met at an event in 2019. Tyler picked him out of a crowd, asked for his phone number, and suggested he might have a role for him. Now, what's really creepy is the role that he had for him was kind of for like a homeless gay guy. And I'm not saying Tyler Perry is writing roles for his actors and then living out these fantasies, but I guess he was hitting on him, and there's some other creepy, very, very weird stuff going on here. Again, these are just his claims. We'll have to see if this thing goes to trial. But yeah, that's a pretty big story. If any of this adds up, it would be a massive, massive lawsuit. All right, well, we got the Justin Baldoni updates I want to share. So we have Kevin Fritz here from one of the law firms that's representing Justin Baldoni, responding to this request to identify content creators. They said in the last interrogatory at issue, the Lively parties demand that the Wayfair parties identify all content creators with whom you have communicated in any manner concerning Miss Lively, Mr. Reynolds, the complaint, the actions, the company, is all of that jazz. So Miss Lively sought to compel a response. But listen, what's interesting here is the sort of parallel universe that's happening where, as content creators, we're continuing to cover this case, but at the same time, some are even getting subpoenaed. There was one content creator, a psychologist, who Justin Baldoni's side wants to subpoena, even though that content creator is relatively, I think, a pro Blake Lively account. And what's interesting about that content creator is that they were part of some of the peddling of misinformation. Do you remember those harassment HR complaints that came out? There was like 2 or 3 HR complaints that came out. They were completely fabricated, made up by who knows. But if they can get down to who made those up, you're going to have some really interesting stuff come out. Now, what's interesting in the news that we have today in the Justin Baldoni versus Blake Lively trial is the Taylor Swift text messages that could reveal whether Blake Lively suffered actual distress, Justin Baldoni says. So Baldoni's side has responded to Blake Lively, who asked for a protective order against the text messages of Taylor Swift, essentially saying this: I don't know what Taylor Swift has shared with them, but I want an order making it so that none of it can be surfaced. Now, Baldoni's side has responded saying she hasn't shared anything with us. But what's really interesting about this is it's almost like they've smoked out Blake Lively to show her own trepidation at what might come out. Because if there are text messages that show Taylor Swift and Blake Lively talking about Justin Baldoni harassing Blake Lively, certainly Blake Lively would want to share those text messages. So what we see from Justin Baldoni's side is they show some case study that shows like, look, if she's going to claim emotional distress, we are entitled to communication with anybody Blake Lively might have spoken to after the incident that she says so harmed her. So I'll read a couple clips of the response by Justin Baldoni's side. As counsel for Wayfair Studios, we write in opposition to Blake Lively's motion for protective order concerning her relevant communications with Taylor Swift. The Wayfair parties also request an order compelling Miss Lively to produce documents related to her allegations of harassment and retaliation, her communications with Miss Swift, Sony, WME concerning the same, and her claims for economic damages, which are responsive to certain requests for production. It's like, you want to make all these claims, show us the evidence. Miss Lively's communications with Taylor Swift are also relevant to Miss Lively's alleged garden variety emotional distress. So Baldoni's side argues that, look, you dropped some of your emotional distress claims, but it's still relevant that we hear about whatever you corresponded with Taylor Swift about. In Smith versus Pergola, the plaintiff claimed that they suffered a significant loss of enjoyment, anxiety, and social withdrawal because of the defendant's alleged discriminatory conduct. This court granted the defendant's motion to compel the plaintiff's production of text messages and emails. So essentially sharing that, like, hey, if you spoke to Taylor Swift, we should really know about that. Here, Miss Lively recently withdrew her claims for intentional infliction of emotional distress and negligent infliction of emotional distress. Thereafter, Miss Lively stated that she still pleads and intends to introduce evidence of garden variety emotional distress in connection with her other remaining claims. As part of her remaining claims for harassment and retaliation, Miss Lively alleges that she has suffered and continues to suffer from severe emotional distress and pain, humiliation, embarrassment, belittlement, frustration, and mental anguish. So they're saying, hey, you're making all these claims. I think we're entitled to know what you said with Taylor. Swift socialized after, here's what they said: if Miss Lively and Miss Swift socialize after the alleged incidents at issue in this case, as has been reported, the Wayfair parties are entitled to relevant communications to disprove Miss Lively's purported emotional distress. And then they continue to throw a jab here saying, we respectfully request the court deny the motion, grant the cross motion, and direct Miss Lively to immediately produce documents responsive to the request within her possession. Although we appreciate the positive influence Miss Swift's music has had on her worldwide audience, it was Miss Lively and not the Wayfair parties that contemporaneously inserted Miss Swift into this dispute. And Miss Lively cannot use Miss Swift's stardom to withhold evidence. Damn. How about them apples, folks? Respectfully submitted, Kevin Fritz. Kevin Fritz coming in from the top ropes, from the upper deck right there. Interesting stuff. And again, they cite this Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce double date article with Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds in New York City from October 11th, 2024. So it's like, look, you're going to claim that you got all these damages done, and you can't just go out to dinner with a pop star, talk about her as one of your Khaleesi's dragons, and then say that you don't want any of those text messages to come out. Come on, make it make sense. All right, well, coming up next, here's what I'm going to do for you guys. If you're listening on the YouTube, I want to try something a little bit different. As you guys know, we cover pop culture. We cover entertainment news. We also cover what's happening politically. And right now in the world, there's a massive war breaking out amongst other things going on, ICE raids and whatnot. But I wanted to try something different and break up the episode into two separate videos. So if you're watching this on YouTube and you want to continue with the rush hour, so stick around. In the next video, we're going to share the ICE arrests of the New York mayor candidate, World War III breaking out, and some other interesting things going on. So stick around for that. That's coming next.